Welcome back to another Hearthstone basic player guide, and in this short little video, probably just an audio log really, I'll be talking about the hero abilities and what they actually do, just in case you're not familiar with what the hero abilities do, or you didn't know how to apply them. Maybe I can just talk about a few ways in which you can apply hero abilities for all the classes. So I'm gonna start off by talking about the Mage, but before I do that, let me just scroll over all the classes. As you can see, all their hero abilities cost 2 mana. So this is a standard thing across the board. All heroes' abilities are diverse, they are all different and perform different tasks. So it's really hard to determine which hero ability is worse than another. But it's all depending on the situation you're in. But just know that they all cost 2 mana, so they all cost the same. So you need to be aware about that you need 2 mana to utilize each hero's special ability. So let's talk about the sorcerer over here, the Mage. It says that her hero power is Fire Blast, which deals 1 damage for 2 mana. So when you look at it, you'll see that that's less mana, that's less damage per mana used, like what, 50% less, I guess. And you'd think that's spending 2 mana on a 1 damage spell is really costly. That may be true, but one thing you have to understand with some of the mage decks is that really the mage class itself really has, well, depending on how you build it, but if you really want to utilize all her spells, you might realize that you are most of the time fighting for board control. Mages struggle in that department. Since they lack a weapon, part 1, they have no way of dealing with minions themselves with weapons. So the best way to establish yourself as a mage within a game is to get board control. So you may say, yes, I have minions for that. Which is true, you will have your minions, but there'll be certain times whereby, let's just say, the player has 4 minions on the board, but you only have 2. So you may think to yourself, why is this spell useless? Because me throwing 1 damage to the opposition player's face, for example, to land damage to the hero itself, isn't really good for the cost of 2 mana. I'd rather have just played a 2 mana minion, for example, that had 3 damage. There's more damage, but you have to understand that that minion cannot attack on the turn you play it unless it's got charge. So you have to really assess what you have in which situation. So now the situations in which you can use Fire Blast, to be honest with you, I know these as the situations. If you have a minion on the board and for example the other player has another minion on the board, let's just say that minion has 9 damage and 5 hit points, and your minion only has 4 damage, for example, and 2 hit points, just saying. So now at least you know that since you've got that minion on the board, let's just say it's a 1v1, 1 minion per player on the board, then what you can do is you can sacrifice your minion to destroy the 9/5. Let's just say it's Core Hound, and you have a minion with 4 damage. Let me try to think. Dark Scale Healer, for example, that's 4/4. So you can deal the 4 damage to the Core Hound. The Core Hound will be left on 9/1, and pretty much any minion you ever see on the board, if you have 2 extra mana, you're supposed to use Fire Blast to destroy that minion, so as to avoid trading your other minions to destroy their minions to vie for board control. So that's one situation you can. Another situation is if you've got a monster with Enrage, or if you've got a monster like a Gurapasha Berserker, then those monsters, when you deal damage to them, then they get enraged, their attack grows, and they get a higher attack rating. So in some cases you wouldn't want to trade your minion with theirs, for example, because your minion with Enrage might not survive the clash with the other minion, or you want to utilize that full damage potential on the turn of attack. So what you can do is you can simply fireball the minion with Enrage, and then it gets the bonus damage, and it doesn't take significant damage loss itself. It only takes 1 from your fireball, which is very small. And then you can use that to buff it and play it on its turn of attack, and therefore it gets its full enraged damage, and the opposition player now has to work according to your threat. Now he has to find a way of removing the enraged unit off the board. So it's another way of vying for board control. And a third situation, I guess this will be the last one for now, on what you could use Fire Blast for is, let's just say you're going up against a Paladin, or you're going up against someone with a Divine Shield deck. And by Divine Shield deck, I mean that this person has got minions that either buff other minions with Divine Shields, or he has got spell cards that give Divine Shield to minions, or minions that just pop up with Divine Shield. So since Divine Shield is a damage absorber, no matter the number of the attack rating, it will absorb that damage and the shield will break, but the minion won't take the damage. You can just use Fire Blast for 2 mana to break that shield, and then you can use your minion to destroy the minion in that case, so that you can make an effective trade, instead of having your minion attack and break the shield and lose hit points and not be able to kill that minion on the same turn. So you'll be left in a rough spot. That's why you can use Fireball in that particular situation. So yeah, it's just really used for damage, damaging low hit point minions, enraging minions, and getting rid of Divine Shields. Good ways in applying this spell called Fire Blast for the Mage. Now let's move on to Rogue. Rogue is a bit, how can I say? I can't say a bit better, but is a bit, yeah, I guess in the sense of clearing minions is a bit better. Her hero ability is Dagger Mastery. So she equips a 1/2 dagger, and the 1 indicates the attack rating of the dagger, and the 2 is the durability of the dagger, which means that if you attack something once, it loses 1 durability, and it's left on 1, and then if you attack again, then it's on 0 durability and the dagger breaks. And so yeah, you have to keep that in mind, that it's not a dagger that you'll use for the rest of the game. It will break after 2 hits, the Dagger Mastery for 2 mana. So you may ask yourself, what could I use this for? The nice thing with Dagger Master is that you may say it also only does 1 damage, but the nice thing is with the Rogue, you've got the poison. You can buff the dagger with poison, which will give it a bonus 2 damage, and then it becomes a 3 for 2 damage dagger. And you can use that to clear 1 mana creeps, you can use that to clear 2 mana creep, you can even use it to clear even 3 to 4 mana creeps. Anything that has less than 3 or less hit points will die, that minion will die. So it's a good way of clearing damage on the board, clearing minions off the board. You're just trading your HP for board control. That's the defining factor of Dagger Mastery, is that you are just trading off HP for board control. So in this regard, it actually really scales better towards into the late game, because 3 damage on a dagger is really a lot of dagger. You can just trade off a small minion with maybe 3 attack, and then you can do the extra 3 attack, and that can take out any minion that has 6 hit points, which are some of the big ones, you know what I mean? Only of course there's some with more HP, but taking away 6 hit points means a lot. And that's why I think the dagger in this case is very good. It scales very well into the late game. And to make things worse, she's got weapon cards that can deal more damage and have more durability. So that's actually a good thing in the sense that makes it scale later into the late game. You can directly do damage from one hero to another. For example, if you buff one of your weapons and it's doing maybe 5 damage or it's doing 6 damage, you can use that to damage the person in the face 2 times or even 3 times, sometimes even 4 times. So that's good. But one thing you have to be careful is that if they have any Swamp Ooze in their deck, they can easily play that card and destroy your weapon no matter what the durability was. That's an easy counter, and it's a basic card that anyone can use. There are some other cards that reduce durability for weapons, but just naming Swamp Ooze because everyone has that card. There's no one who does not have a Swamp Ooze. So that's pretty much a little bit I can talk about in terms of Dagger Mastery. It's very good, scales into the late game, and it's a nice way of clearing minions off the board without you having to use your own minions in the trade itself. It's very good for board control, as rogues really are strong in the early to mid game. In the late game, you would find that you're running out of cards, so you're playing cards like Sprint to get your card draw up. You're always going to be at a card deficit, but with the dagger that's been buffed, then you can easily make a comeback by clearing some of their minions, and you can combo some of your minions as well. As for example, the Bloodsail Raider has a buff that says that for whatever attack rating your weapon has, that number is added onto the Bloodsail Raider's attack. So that's actually quite good. It can combo certain cards, and it's really nice like that. The third skill I'm going to talk about is the Hunter. The Hunter's hero ability. And his hero ability is Steady Shot. It does 2 damage to the enemy hero. Full stop. That's all it does. You can't use it on anything else besides the enemy hero. So you may ask, why would I want to do that? Hunters are very strong, very, very strong in the early game. That's when they're at their peak. So for every time they're playing turns, if they have an extra 2 mana, they've got extra 2 damage to your hero. So just know that every turn you're going to take 2 damage. Well, not every turn, but most of the time. Let's just say 60% of the game, you're going to be taking 2 damage to your hero directly from the hunter. And this is just used to whittle you down slowly and slowly. And if you're budgeting that I could survive with a certain amount of HP, then the Steady Shot will always make sure you're below this threshold that you need to survive the early game. But as you go, if you survive the early game as you're moving on to the late game and you're now playing your big minions, to my personal opinion, Steady Shot really becomes non-effective. If the hunter is at a HP deficit and you are in the HP lead, Steady Shot to me becomes a misuse of mana. If it's one of those, if you have nothing else to play, then play the Steady Shot, and really you're just trying to claw yourself back into the game with Steady Shot. So it's excellent in the mid game, it's excellent in the early game, but in the late game I would say I would rate this as one of the lower tier hero abilities. I don't know, maybe you could disagree on me. Now the fourth one I would like to talk about is the Warrior's hero ability, and that's Armor Up. For 2 mana you gain 2 armor, and the way the armor system works in this game is simple. If you have 1 armor, it corresponds to having 1 hit point. So if a minion does 1 attack rating, it will break 1 armor. So it's very simple to calculate that, and really most players rate this as one of, if not the lowest hero ability. If there were to be a tier list, this would be last, as really it's only giving you a HP buffer. That's all it does. It's granting you extra HP to try survive longer. So if you are struggling, you could use this as a way to try survive longer in hopes that you can make a play that will claw you back into the game. But if you are in the lead, this hero ability does nothing for you besides give you extra armor that you don't need. That's why it's not really good, because the situations in which it's viable are so few. So it doesn't really help the warrior that much. But one situation you can do is warriors too can equip weapons, like rogues. And so when you equip a weapon and you're trading, when you're trying to clear a minion off the board, when you hit the minion, its attack is dealt to you and your attack is dealt to it. So if you have armor, you can withstand the minion's damage, therefore you don't lose that much HP, which is a good thing. That's the only really good thing about it. If you have no weapons in your deck, then this ability really is just for trying to claw back out of a lose. The Shaman is to me is the most interesting of them all, as the Shaman's hero ability is Totem Core. In Totem Core, Totemic Core, you call 1 of 4 random totems. You can call a 0/2 totem that has 0 attack, as I said, and 2 hit points, and it heals at the end of every turn. It heals everything on the board, including yourself, for 1 hit point. So if you can find a way to get, for example, if you're rushing your opponent down and you've got a lot of minions on the board, having that that totem is good if you've got something to, if you have a taunt card maybe, so that they can't attack it directly. And as each of the rounds are going and you're making trades with their minions, that totem will be healing, keeping on leaving your minions in a higher HP pool than they were if they didn't have that totem. And then you can summon a 0/2 totem that gives you plus spell damage, which is good if you have any spells, but if you don't have any spells, then that would be your weakest totem. There's a 0/2 totem that is a taunt, which is good if you're trying to vie for board control. Then you can, hopefully if you random that totem, it will help you get a buffer of 2 HP that the opponent has to destroy before he attacks your minions. And after that is the last totem you can get from Totemic Core, which is a 1/1 totem, and that's it. It's pretty much like summoning a 1/1 minion for 2 mana. That's all it can do. So as you can see from that, really, there are so many ways in which you can implement totems. It really varies up the playstyle of the Shaman. It means that you can build your deck in a various number of ways. If you want to rush them down, it's possible to keep your minions on high HP with the healing totem. Sometimes you can run away with not having any taunt cards in your deck because there's a totem that if you've got a 1 in 4 chance of getting, which will be a taunt, and then you can buff it with HP so that it becomes a bigger taunt. Or if you've got a lot of spells in your deck, there's the totem that can help you buff spell damage, and then your spells do more damage, and so on. And the 1/1 minion totem, you can just buff it and it becomes a better minion, I guess, but it's not really worth it. It's good for the early game if you're on board control. But that's, to me, that's really interesting. It really makes the Shaman, in my opinion, really various, really diverse, and interesting to play, in my point of view. Now onto the Warlock. The Warlock has been deemed one of the most, I guess, second to Shaman or ahead of Shaman, I'm not really sure, but it's one playstyle or one hero style that has a various diverse pool of cards in which you can play the Warlock in many ways. You can play a slow building, going for late game Warlock. You can rush down with the Warlock. You can do a Warlock that controls for board control. You can do a spell-based Warlock. There are so many ways in which you can play, as this card has got so many, as this class has so many various cards. And the reason why you can play it in so many various ways is because of its hero power. Now, this hero power is a double-edged sword. You have to be really careful. You spend 2 of your HP to draw a card in that turn as it is, which is very powerful, as having more cards than the opposing player is really, really strong, I guess, because the only way you're gonna have, for example, board control, or the only way you're gonna have a life lead is if the person you're facing has less, for example, he has less minions that are of less threat to you, and you have more minions that he has to find a way to deal with. So the more cards you have, chances are you find yourself in a better situation. But the double-edged sword is that you'll be taking your own HP. So you have to be careful. You have to understand that with the current number of cards that the opponent has, how much does he need to kill me? So if he top decks something, does this change my chances of survival? Because if you use 2 HP to draw an extra card that you wouldn't have had, what if that 2 HP was the amount of hit points you needed to survive the next turn? So you really have to be careful, as you can put yourself low and end up killing yourself with this hero ability, as it's so powerful there to balance it out that way. Now with the priest, he's got a 2 mana ability, of course, and this restores health for 2 health pretty much. And this in ways is similar to the warrior hero ability of armoring up and getting 2 more hit points. But the one thing you have to understand about the hero is that even if you're maxed out at 30 hit points, you can still get 30 hit points and 2 armor, 30 hit points, 4 armor, and keep on going. For example, there can be a situation where you have 30 hit points and 15 armor. So the person has to finish the 15 armor before they can actually start depleting your hit points that are at 30. But in the case of the priest, you can't have, for example, 32 HP. No, you can only have 30. 30 is the max. But the nice thing is about the heal ability is that you can use the heal to heal minions. Now, the priest has got some cards. For example, there's a cleric card where if any minion on the board is healed, including the cleric, you can draw a card, and this will give you more card draw. So there'll be some minions, for example, that have certain effects, certain abilities like that, whereby if you heal any minion on the board, you get card draw. And of course, another way of applying is that you can trade with minions. For example, if I have a 4/4 minion and the other person has a 2/2 minion, I can do battle the 4/4 against the 2/2. The 4/4 will survive as 4/2 now, and you can heal it again, and it returns back to a 4 health 4/4 minion, and you continue trying to buff your minions with that hero ability, trying to give them more HP so that they can last longer and hopefully win you the game. Of the last two, there's the Druid. The Druid has a shapeshift ability, and this ability gives you 1 attack and 1 armor. The armor keeps on stacking per turn. So for example, if I use this ability in turn 2, for example, and I attack the opponent in the face, for example, the one attack goes, but the 1 armor stays. And if I use it again, I get another armor and another 1 attack. When I use that 1 attack, it goes. Even if I don't attack and end turn, that 1 attack still goes. But the armor will still remain up now on 2 armor. So you can use this to armor yourself up and clear minions on the board. It's a nice way of, since for example the Rogue's Blades had durability, but the Druid of course has no durability, so the only way to kind of level this out is that since the Rogue gets more attacks out of the weapon, which means she can potentially clear more creeps on the board with the same weapon, the Druid gets armor to leverage the damage he takes with himself, and there are certain cards he can use to buff his damage output so that he can clear a little bit more bigger minions and without taking too much damage because he's got armor as well. It's an interesting hero ability, I believe. I think it's really good. Any to be honest with you, any ability that can either get me more minions on the board or help me clear their minions for control, I really like, as that's how I like to play, or at least that's how I think I like to play, and that's trying to get board control and a life lead. The last hero ability I'll be covering is the Paladin. The Paladin's 2 mana to summon a 1/1 Silver Hand Recruit. So now, the nice thing is about the Silver Hand Recruits is, for example, in the early game, in the maybe first and second turn, first turn if you have a coin of course, you can use this to try get board control and just summon a 1/1 minion that the other person has to now think to themselves, do I clear this 1/1 minion and finish my turn, or do I play my minion and leave the board at 50-50 in terms of possession, so that he can play another minion and use his recruit to either do damage to me or try whittle down my minion. So you use these reinforcements to try swarm the board with more units, and then you can use other units to buff. Like for example, Stormwind Champion works like this. If you've got 4 minions on the board, for example, and you play Stormwind Champion, all those minions get +1 damage. So for example, if I played Stormwind Champion when I had 4 Silver Hand Recruits, right, they would all now become 2/2 minions, and that would be a total of 8 damage and 8 hit points that the opponent has to deal with. Or for example, there's a card called the Frostwolf Warlord, and the way the Frostwolf Warlord works is that it gains 1 attack and 1 health per unit that you have on the field. So for example, if I had 4 of these Silver Hand Recruits on the field and I played the Frostwolf Warlord, he would come in with the extra 4 attack and the extra 4 hit points, making him a 10/10 minion for 6 mana, which is really good. So you can use these Silver Hand Recruits to buff other bigger minions, or you could use other minions to buff your army of Silver Hand Recruits, but on their own they're very weak and can easily be taken out by hero abilities similar, for example, with Fireball or with Dagger Mastery, for example. Or even the Druid could just shapeshift and kill your silver and recruit. So really, I believe these hero abilities are quite balanced out, and they're very diverse and they're very interesting. And I hope you've learned something from this video, and I'll check you out some other time. Thank you.